So the next thing we are going to look at is margins and paddings. Now, margins and paddings kind of confuses a lot of people when they are starting up with web development, and even with experienced guys. I have a separate video on margins and paddings you may want to look at. I'll leave the link in the description below, and it pretty much touches on the intrinsic aspect of margins and paddings. We are going to see some few things over here, and I'll try as much as I can to explain this very well. So margins and paddings, obviously both of them are distances, but then it depends on where you are measuring from. Okay, so the point of reference is always the border. Kindly have that in mind. The point of reference is always the border, and we normally use a box model to explain margins and paddings. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put out a div tag, and inside this div I'm going to have a paragraph, and I'm going to say lorem 100. So this is what we have over here. So as far as this div tag is concerned, I'm going to give it some classes over here, and we've not talked about this class, but then I think this will give it a very proper meaning as far as this is concerned. So now this is what you're going to do. I'm going to do a border. So we have a Bootstrap class called border, and I'll do border and I'll do primary. So all I'm trying to say is I need a border around this div, or I need a border for this div, as you see over here, but then I need the primary color. So that's what you see over here, and it looks pretty much okay, at least for the purposes of this demonstration. Now what's next I'm going to do is I'm also going to copy this. I'll do Ctrl+C and I'll bring it down here, and this is what we have. Now in order to see the changes the way we want them, let's change this primary to, let's say, danger. So we have the second one as red. Now remember I made mention of the fact that the most important thing as far as margins and paddings are concerned, the reference point you should always be mindful of is the border, because the border determines whether you are moving into a margin or you are moving into a padding. Now these are the elements within this div. Okay, so the text is the element, and the border is the line we see around it. Now the distance, or the internal distance from these elements and the border, the internal distance between the element and the border is referred to as padding, and the external distance between this border we see over here, the blue border, and other borders or other elements is referred to as a margin. So in order to apply margins and paddings over here, let's start off with a padding. And remember, the padding is the internal distance between the border and the elements. So if you want to increase the distance between this border and this element, the start of this lorem isuem to the top, what we can do as far as padding is concerned, we can do a padding top. So we can do PT. And when we do PT and we specify PT of 5, let me start with 5. You can see that the distance over here has increased. So basically this is what we see, PT5. But then it starts with PT1. So this is PT1 as you see over there. This is PT2. This is PT3. This is PT4. And obviously this is PT5. It ends with the 5. Now let me also duplicate, or before I continue, let me also duplicate this a couple of times. So I'll have Ctrl+C, Ctrl+V, Ctrl+V, and these are here. So the first one we saw over here, we have a padding to the top. Now if you want to do a padding to the bottom, and let's come to this one, the first or the second div we have over here, we can do a padding. So we can do PB. So this is padding bottom. You can do padding bottom 5, and when we do padding bottom 5, this is what I'm saying. We want to increase the internal distance between this border and the elements we have over here, and that's padding bottom. Now let's come here, and over here I'm going to change this color to info so that we kind of see the differences over here. So this color is now info. This color is now info, and that's the third box. Now with the third box, what I'm going to do is, as far as the paddings are concerned, I'm just going to do a P-5. When I do a P-5, what I'm trying to say is I need a padding on all four sides. So remember, the first one was the padding top, and that's what I specified, PT, padding top 5. The next one was padding bottom 5, and that's what I did, PB5. Now when I do just P5, it is going to apply padding to the top, right, bottom, and left. Now in that same way, if you want a padding to the right and left, we can also do PR, which is padding to the right. We can do PR5, and we will see the padding over here has increased. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put out another class over here. I'll do txt and I'll do justify. So I'm going to justify all the content over here so that the padding becomes more obvious as far as looking at it is concerned. So we are learning a couple of things. We are learning new Bootstrap classes and how we apply them as we move along. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this. So Control C, and I'm going to paste it here. And let me also copy this and paste it here. All right, so this is, let's make this the border color. Let me change this to warning. The warning is going to be the yellow color, and that's what you see over here. Later we are going to deal with margins, and we are going to separate them from each other. Remember, the margin is the external distance between the borders. So as far as this is concerned, remember we have a padding right, so we can do a padding left. So that's very simple, PL, and when we do 5, you can see that we have a padding to our left. Now we can do, and that's going to apply to this particular one, we can do, for instance, a PX. And when we do PX, all that we are trying to say is we need a padding along the x-axis. So you can do a PX5. When you do a PX5, all that we are trying to say is we need a padding to the left and right, okay, all at the same time. So we don't have to do PL5, PR5, okay, we can simply do PX5. And if your guess is as good as mine, let me just duplicate this, Control C. If you want to do top and bottom, we can also do a PY5. And when we do a PY5, that's exactly what we see over here. This to the top and the bottom. So as far as padding is concerned, as we see, we can do the padding top, okay, and this is not just only 5. Like I said, we start with 1, we can go to 2, 3, 4, 5. It ends with 5, but then as we move along, the numbers, the bigger they get, and I want it to be very obvious or visible. That's why I use 5. Now let's go to the margins, and let's start with the very top as we see over here. Now we can do over here to, let's do a margin top. Now when we do a margin top, we are going to see some kind of gap, or the gap over here increase. So let's do a margin to the top of 5. And when I do margin top 5, you see that this increases. Now what we can do, this is the second bottom, or this is the second box. Let's also do a margin bottom of 5. When you do a margin bottom of 5, you can see that this is now separating from this, because this is the margin has to do with the external distance between the borders. Okay, this is the external distance. So now let's quickly come down here and see. This is the danger, the first of the danger. So this as you see over here, and let's just do a margin 5. So with margin 5, all that we are trying to say is we want a margin to the top, right, bottom, and left. So when we do margin 5, we're going to see that we are going to have some distances around this div container or div class we have over here. Now in that same vein, if you just want a margin to the left and right, like we did with these ones. Let me come here. Yes, we did with these ones. We can just do an MX5. So this is just going to give us a margin to the left and right. And we can also do an MY. And when we do MY5, it's going to give us a margin to the top and bottom. And these are margins and paddings as far as Bootstrap is concerned. So what I'm going to do is you are going to go back over here to where we had our buttons, okay? And as you can see, the buttons were so much stuck to each other, especially with the first one. So we can apply a margin, and as you can see, the margin is going to be the external distance. So we can come back to the buttons over here, and this is the first one, view more. So we can give this another class of, let's say, a margin to the left, okay? We can do a margin left of 5, and when we do a margin left of 5, you can see that it now pushes things up over here. We have some kind of space over here. So let's say we do a margin left of 3, and this is what we see over here. You can also do a margin X. So when you do a margin X, we are going to see the distance to the left and right. So we do margin X, and that's essentially what we see over here. We can as well apply the same classes over here as far as the margins and paddings are concerned. And let me come here and do, this is the first one. We can do a margin X, and for margin X, let's do 4. So when I do margin X4, you can see that there's some kind of margin. Now when we do padding over here, now let's do a P of 5. When we do a padding of 5, like, so as you can see, this is going to be the internal distance. Okay, it's going to increase the internal distance over here, and that's what you see over here. Like, it looks quite big as far as this is concerned. So it depends on what you want to do. If this is what you want, which I guess you don't, but then basically these are the reasons why you'd have to master margins and paddings very well.